The wrapping paper crinkled under my hands as I folded another corner around the cashmere scarf I'd bought for Mom. Christmas morning at their penthouse always started the same way, them showing off, me staying quiet. The floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the harbor, the kind of view that cost $8,000 a month. They never let me forget it. "Emma, honey, are you even listening?" Mom's voice cut through my concentration. She stood by their marble kitchen island, one manicured hand on her hip, the other holding her third mimosa of the morning. "Your father and I were discussing how fortunate we are to live in such an exclusive building. The property management is very selective about tenants." I smiled and continued wrapping. "That's nice, Mom." "Nice." Dad chuckled from his leather recliner, setting down his newspaper. "It's exceptional. Do you know what the average renter in this building earns? 6 figures minimum. Most are 7-figure executives or entrepreneurs." "Fascinating," I murmured, reaching for the tape. Mom circled closer, her designer heels clicking on the hardwood. "We worry about you, sweetheart. Living in that little studio in the Arts District. What do you even pay there? $1,200? $1,500? "Around that," I said neutrally. "See, Richard." Mom turned to Dad dramatically. "She's still in budget housing. 29 years old and living like a college student." Dad folded his newspaper with deliberate precision. "Emma, your mother and I have been meaning to talk to you about your trajectory. You work at that gallery, correct? What are you making there? $35,000 a year? 40. "The gallery work is fulfilling," I replied, carefully not answering the question. "Fulfilling doesn't pay bills," Mom interjected. She picked up one of the gifts I'd wrapped, a silk tie for Dad, and examined it critically. "Designer wrapping paper but living in poverty. That's so like you, Emma. All style, no substance." My phone buzzed on the counter. I glanced at the screen and saw it was from Richard Chin, my property manager. The preview showed, confirming rent increase to $15,000 as requested by owner. Effective January 1st. Notification letters going out today. I flipped the phone face down and returned to wrapping. "Are you expecting an important call?" Dad asked pointedly. "Or is this another one of your freelance opportunities that never materialize?" "Just work stuff," I said. Mom laughed, the sound sharp and performative. "Work stuff? Richard, did you hear that? She calls that little gallery job work stuff, like she's running a corporation." "Speaking of which," Dad leaned forward in his chair, "your mother and I wanted to offer you some advice. It's time you faced reality about your financial situation. This building, for example," he gestured around their penthouse, "is simply above your class. There's no shame in that. Most people can't afford luxury housing. We pay $8,000 a month," Mom added as if I didn't know. She'd mentioned it roughly 400 times since they'd moved in 3 years ago. "Plus another $2,000 for the parking spaces and storage unit. That's $10,000 monthly. Can you even imagine having that kind of disposable income?" I could imagine it quite well, actually. I received it every month, along with the payments from the other 47 units in the building. "It must be hard to imagine," I agreed. Dad stood and walked to the window, his posture radiating self-satisfaction. "The key to success, Emma, is understanding your limitations. Your mother and I worked hard to get where we are. I'm a senior VP at Northbrook Financial. Your mother consults for 3 major firms. We earned this lifestyle." "We did earn it," Mom emphasized. She refreshed her mimosa and continued, "That's why we can afford to live here while you're stuck in that shabby arts district. Have you considered that maybe you chose the wrong career path?" "The gallery makes me happy," I said simply. "Happy?" Mom nearly shrieked. "Happy doesn't get you into buildings like this. Happy doesn't get you past doormen and security screening. Do you know how rigorous the vetting process was when we applied here? Background checks, credit reports, employment verification, personal references. They don't let just anyone live in the Meridian Tower." The Meridian Tower. My building. The property I'd purchased with my first major art sale when I was 26, back when Mom and Dad thought I was wasting time with those silly paintings. The 48-unit luxury complex that generated roughly $400,000 monthly in rental income. "The screening process does sound thorough," I observed. Dad turned from the window, his expression condescending in that way he'd perfected over decades of corporate ladder climbing. "Emma, we're not trying to hurt your feelings. We're trying to help you understand reality. This building represents a certain echelon of society. The residents here are doctors, lawyers, executives, successful entrepreneurs. You're a gallery assistant who paints on weekends. I do paint on weekends, I confirmed. Exactly. Mom seized on this. Hobbies don't pay rent in luxury buildings. Your father and I could probably get you a staff discount at one of the restaurants he manages accounts for. You could afford a nicer place if you budgeted better. Maybe a 2-bedroom in a mid-range building. My phone buzzed again. Another message from Richard. Also confirming your request to have notifications delivered by 5 p.m. today. Timing will catch most residents during evening return. Security has been briefed on potential complaints. I'd specifically requested the rent increase notices go out on Christmas Day, timed for early evening when residents would be home with family, feeling festive and generous. A strategic choice that would minimize complaints. My building, my timing. Emma. Dad's voice sharpened. Are you paying attention? This is important. I'm listening, I assured him. Mom settled onto the couch, crossing her legs with practiced elegance. Here's what we're saying, sweetheart. You need to accept that you'll never live in a building like this. And that's okay. Not everyone can be successful. Some people are meant to be artists and dreamers. You just need to find your level. High level, I repeated. Yes. Mom seemed pleased I was catching on. Your level. A modest apartment, a modest job, a modest life. There's dignity in knowing your place. Your father and I are simply trying to save you from the disappointment of aiming too high. Dad poured himself a scotch at 11 in the morning, and added, take this building as an example. The Meridian Tower isn't just expensive, it's exclusive. The owner is notoriously selective. Did you know they personally approve every tenant application? I didn't know that, I lied smoothly. It's true, Mom confirmed. Richard, our property manager, told us the owner reviews every single application. Apparently, there's some sort of reclusive real estate mogul who bought the building as an investment property. Very mysterious. Nobody's ever met them. I'd met Richard plenty of times, of course. Usually at the monthly property reviews we conducted at my downtown office, the one Mom and Dad didn't know about. The office in the building I also owned, 3 blocks from the gallery where I worked. A mysterious owner, I said. Interesting. More than interesting, Dad interjected. It's smart business. Maintain exclusivity, keep property values high, ensure only quality tenants. That's the kind of thinking that builds wealth. Not whatever artistic philosophy you're pursuing. Mom leaned forward conspiratorially. Between us, Emma, I don't think the owner would ever approve someone like you as a tenant. No offense, darling, but you don't fit the profile. Young, unestablished, working in the arts? They'd reject your application before the credit check cleared. Probably, I agreed. The morning continued in this vein. More mimosas, more criticism thinly veiled as concern, more detailed explanations of why I'd never achieved their level of success. Mom described their apartment's custom features. The Italian marble imported specifically for their unit, the smart home system, the private terrace. All things I'd approved and overseen during the building's renovation 4 years ago, before they'd even applied to live here. Around 1 o'clock, Dad's phone rang. He glanced at the screen and frowned. It's Richard Chin. Odd for him to call on Christmas. Answer it, Mom urged. Maybe there's a building issue. Dad put the call on speaker. Richard, Merry Christmas. Is everything all right? Richard's professional voice filled the room. Merry Christmas, Mr. Patterson. I apologize for calling on a holiday, but I wanted to personally inform you of an important update before you receive the official notice. Official notice? Mom's mimosa paused halfway to her lips. Yes, Mrs. Patterson. The building owner has implemented a rent adjustment effective January 1st. Your monthly rent will be increasing from $8,000 to $15,000. Silence crashed through the penthouse like a physical force. 15,000? Dad's voice cracked slightly. That's nearly double. Sir. The owner conducted a market analysis and determined that current rents were significantly below market value for comparable luxury properties in the Harbor District. The adjustment brings the Meridian Tower in line with similar buildings. Mom had gone pale. This is outrageous. We have a lease. Your lease includes a rent adjustment clause permitting increases with 90 days' notice, Richard explained calmly. You'll note the increase doesn't take effect until January 1st, which provides exactly 90 days from today's notification. We need to speak with the owner, Dad demanded. This is unacceptable. I'm afraid the owner doesn't take direct calls from tenants. All communication goes through property management, through me. However, I can tell you that this decision is final. The owner was quite clear in their instructions. Instructions. Mom's voice pitched higher. What kind of landlord implements massive rent increases on Christmas Day? The kind who requested specifically that notices go out today, Richard replied evenly. The owner believed holiday timing would allow residents to discuss options with family and make informed decisions about their housing with support systems present. I continued wrapping presents, my face carefully neutral. This is insane, Dad sputtered. $15,000 a month? That's $180,000 annually just for rent. Plus parking and storage, which are also increasing proportionally, Richard added helpfully. Your new total monthly cost will be approximately $18,000. Mom looked like she might faint. Richard, there must be some mistake. We're model tenants. We pay on time, we don't complain, we maintain the property beautifully. Surely the owner will make exceptions for long-time residents. The rent increase is building-wide, Richard confirmed. All 48 units received the same percentage increase. The owner was quite equitable in their approach. Equitable? Dad slammed his glass down. There's nothing equitable about pricing out your tenants. The owner doesn't believe anyone is being priced out, Richard countered. The market analysis showed that all current tenants have the financial capacity to afford the increase based on their verified income from their original applications. The owner was very thorough in their research. Mom and Dad exchanged panicked glances. I knew exactly what they were thinking. They'd stretched their budget to afford $8,000. $15,000 would break them. We need time, Mom said desperately. Can we negotiate a gradual increase? Maybe spread it over several years. I'm afraid not. The owner was firm on the timeline and amount. However, if you choose not to renew at the new rate, you have 90 days to find alternative housing. The owner has already indicated they have a waiting list of prospective tenants eager to pay the new rate. Of course, there was a waiting list. The Meridian Tower was the most prestigious address in the Harbor District. I'd received 43 applications in the past month alone for units that weren't even vacant yet. This is corporate greed, Dad pronounced, falling back on the righteous indignation that usually served him well in board meetings. Heartless capitalism at its worst. I'll pass your feedback to the owner, Richard said diplomatically. Is there anything else I can help you with today? Yes, Mom snapped. Tell your mysterious owner that they're destroying families with this kind of ruthless profiteering. I'll include that in my report. Merry Christmas to you both. The call ended. The silence that followed was deafening. Dad stared at his phone like it had personally betrayed him. $18,000 a month. That's more than my mortgage was when we bought our first house. What are we going to do? Mom's voice had lost all its earlier smugness. We can't afford that. Not with my consulting business slowing down and your company's hiring freeze. Wait, I said innocently. I thought you said you worked hard and earned this lifestyle? That you could afford luxury housing because of your success. Mom's head snapped toward me. This is different. This is price gouging. Is it? I asked mildly. Or is it just the market rate for exclusive housing in a selective building? Don't you dare, Dad warned, his face reddening. Don't you dare use our words against us right now. I'm just trying to understand, I continued, my voice pleasant. Earlier you said I needed to accept my limitations and know my level. You said this building was above my class. But now it seems like maybe it's above yours too. This isn't the same thing. Mom protested. We could afford the original rent. This is an unexpected increase. Life has unexpected costs, I observed, echoing Dad's favorite lecture. Isn't that what you always told me? That successful people adapt and find solutions. Dad pointed a shaking finger at me. This is not the time for your sass, Emma. We're facing a serious financial crisis here. Are you? I set down my wrapping paper. Because a few hours ago you were telling me about your disposable income and your earned success. Has that changed? Mom's eyes narrowed. You're enjoying this. You're actually enjoying watching us panic. I'm not enjoying anything, I said truthfully. I'm just listening to you discuss your financial situation the same way you discussed mine this morning. It's completely different. Dad insisted. We're your parents. We were trying to help you understand reality. And now reality is helping you understand something, I replied calmly. Mom stood abruptly, her earlier elegance replaced by frantic energy. We need to call other buildings, check availability, see what else is on the market. Richard, maybe we can find something comparable for less. Maybe something in the mid-range? I suggested helpfully. A 2-bedroom in a budget-friendly building? I hear there are some nice places in the Arts District. The Arts District? Mom looked horrified. That's where you live. We can't move there. Why not? I asked. You were just telling me I should find my level. Maybe it's time you found yours. Dad's face had progressed from red to purple. Emma Louise Patterson, that is enough. Show some respect. We're in crisis mode here. I can see that, I said. What's your plan? Mom had her phone out, frantically scrolling through rental listings. Everything comparable is even more expensive. The Harborview apartments want $17,000 for a 2-bedroom. The seaside residences are $19,000 for anything with a water view. Supply and demand, I noted. That's basic economics. The kind of economics successful people understand. Stop it. Mom shrieked. Just stop it. This isn't funny. I never said it was funny, I replied. I'm just pointing out that the building you said was above my class is apparently above yours too now. Dad collapsed back into his chair, the fight draining out of him. We'll have to move. There's no other option. We can't afford $15,000 a month, let alone 18 with parking and storage. Maybe you could budget better? I suggested, using Mom's earlier words. Cut back on mimosas and designer clothes? Cook at home instead of eating at expensive restaurants. That won't save us $13,000 a month. Mom wailed. No, I agreed. It won't. But it might help you afford a modest apartment. There's dignity in knowing your place, remember? Mom's eyes filled with tears, real ones, not the manipulative kind she usually deployed. How can you be so cruel? We're your parents. Don't you care that we're about to lose our home? The way you cared about my shabby studio this morning? I asked quietly. The way you cared about my budget housing and my poor career choices? Dad looked up at me, and for the first time, I saw something that might have been understanding in his eyes. You're making a point. Am I? I asked. Yes, he said heavily. You're showing us how it feels to be judged and dismissed. To have our choices mocked and our situation belittled. That's very insightful, Dad. Mom wiped her eyes, mascara smearing. So what? You get to feel superior now? You get to watch us scramble and struggle? No, I said simply. I get to finish wrapping your Christmas presents and then tell you something important. What could possibly be important right now? Mom demanded. I reached for my phone and pulled up my email, then turned the screen toward them. It showed the message chain between me and Richard Chin, with a very clear header. From Emma Patterson, owner, Meridian Properties LLC. They both stared at the screen. Then at me. Then back at the screen. What is this? Dad's voice came out barely above a whisper. What it looks like, I replied. I'm your landlord. I've been your landlord for 3 years. Mom made a sound like a dying balloon. That's impossible. It's very possible. I bought the Meridian Tower 4 years ago when I was 26. I renovated it, hired Richard as property manager, and began renting units. You applied 2 years after I purchased it. Richard brought me your application. I approved it. But you work at a gallery, Dad protested weakly. I own a gallery, I corrected. I also own 6 other commercial properties downtown, 3 residential buildings in the Harbor District, and a mixed-use development in the Arts District. My portfolio is worth approximately $47 million. The gallery is where I display my art. It's also a profitable business, but mostly it's my passion project. Silence. Complete, absolute silence. Mom finally found words. Your art. You said you sold paintings. I did. My first major sale was for $8 million. I was 25. I used $6 million of it as a down payment on the Meridian Tower. The building was undervalued because the previous owner neglected maintenance. I renovated it, increased its value by 200% and began generating steady income. $8 million? Dad looked dazed. For a painting? For a series, actually. A corporate collection purchased by a tech company for their headquarters. I've had 4 major sales since then, plus numerous smaller ones. My art income averages 3 to 4 million annually. My property income is substantially higher. Mom had sat back down, her legs apparently unable to support her. You're rich. Yes, I confirmed. I'm rich. The kind of rich that makes your 6-figure incomes look modest. I could buy your lifestyle 50 times over and still have money left to invest. But you live in that studio, Mom protested. You dress simply. You work at the gallery. You drive a 10-year-old Honda. I live in that studio because it's where I paint. I dress simply because designer clothes don't improve my art. I work at the gallery because I love art. I drive a Honda because it runs well and I don't care about status symbols. Dad's brain was visibly processing. The rent increase. You implemented it. Today. On Christmas. Yes, I said calmly. I implemented it today because you spent this entire morning telling me I was below your class. That I'd never afford a building like this. That I needed to know my place. I wanted you to understand what it feels like to have your worth measured by your address. That's vindictive, Mom whispered. Is it? Or is it just market rate adjustment? Richard wasn't lying. Comparable buildings do charge $15,000 to $19,000 for units like yours. I've actually been undercharging for 3 years. The increase is legitimate. But we can't afford it, Dad said hoarsely. No, I agreed. You can't. Just like I supposedly couldn't afford it according to you. The difference is I actually own it. Mom's hands trembled around her phone. So what happens now? You evict us? Force us out onto the street to prove your point. I looked at her for a long moment. What do you think I should do, Mom? I think you should show mercy, she burst out. We're your parents. You can't just throw us out. The same parents who spent this morning mocking my career and my lifestyle? The same parents who told me I'd never amount to anything? Those parents. We were just worried about you, Dad tried. No, I said firmly. You were judging me. There's a difference. You've been judging me for years. Every time I chose art over corporate jobs. Every time I picked passion over prestige. Every family gathering, every phone call, every visit, judgment. So this is revenge? Mom's voice broke. No, I said quietly. This is consequence. You told me that successful people understand their limitations. You told me to know my place. I'm simply helping you understand yours. Dad rubbed his face with both hands. What do you want from us, Emma? An apology. Do you think you owe me one? He looked at me, really looked at me for maybe the first time in years. Yes. Yes, I think we owe you several. Hundreds, probably. We didn't know, Mom protested. We thought you were struggling. You thought I was beneath you, I corrected. You thought my choices were wrong because they didn't match yours. You never asked about my life. You never showed interest in my work. You just assumed that because I didn't flaunt wealth, I didn't have it. That's not fair, Mom tried. Isn't it? Mom, how many times have you visited my studio in 4 years? How many of my gallery showings have you attended? She opened her mouth, then closed it. I don't know. A few. 0, I said. You've been to 0 showings. Dad's been to 1 and he left early to take a work call. You've never seen my studio. You've never asked about my art career beyond dismissive comments about my hobby. Dad's shoulders sagged. You're right. Richard, I said, startling them both. I'm sorry. You said I was right. About what specifically? He met my eyes. About all of it. We judged you. We dismissed your choices. We measured your worth by our standards instead of trying to understand yours. We were terrible parents about this. We were terrible parents, Mom echoed, tears flowing freely now. Emma, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I let the apology hang in the air for a moment. Do you mean that? Or are you just afraid of being evicted? Both, Dad admitted. I won't lie. I'm terrified of losing our home. But I'm more terrified that we've damaged our relationship with our daughter beyond repair. Mom nodded frantically. We were wrong. About everything. Your art, your choices, your life. We were so wrong. I picked up my phone and typed a quick message to Richard, then set it down. The rent increase stands for the building. Market rate is market rate. Mom's face fell. But we can't. However, I continued, I'm implementing an exception for Unit 47. Your unit. The rent will remain at $8,000 monthly, locked in for the next 5 years with no increases. After that, we'll reassess based on your financial situation. They both stared at me in disbelief. You keeping our rent the same? Dad asked. Yes. On 3 conditions. Anything, Mom said immediately. First, you attend every one of my gallery showings from now on. Every single one. You show up, you look at the art, and you at least try to understand why I do this. Done, they said in unison. Second, you stop measuring success by income and addresses. You stop judging people, including me, by external markers of wealth. You learn to value different definitions of success. Dad nodded slowly. That's fair. That's more than fair. Third, I said, my voice soft now, you start treating me like an adult who made good choices, even if they weren't the choices you would have made. You start respecting my path. Mom was openly sobbing now. Yes. God, yes. Emma, I'm so sorry we didn't respect you before. I walked over and handed them the presents I'd been wrapping. The cashmere scarf for Mom, the silk tie for Dad. These cost more than your monthly rent, by the way. I just wanted you to know that. Dad laughed, the sound slightly hysterical. Of course they did. Jesus, Emma. We've been such fools. Yes, I agreed gently. You've been. But you're my fools and I love you anyway. Mom pulled me into a hug, her whole body shaking. I'm so proud of you. I should have said that years ago. I'm so incredibly proud of you. We both are, Dad added, joining the embrace. What you've built, what you've accomplished. It's remarkable. You're remarkable. We stood there for a long moment, the 3 of us wrapped together. When we finally separated, I pulled out my phone again. I'm sending you both access to my portfolio files. Every property, every investment, every art sale. I want you to understand what I've been building while you thought I was just playing with paint. Mom wiped her eyes as her phone dinged. She opened the files and her jaw dropped. Emma, this is incredible. You're not just successful, you're extraordinary. I tried to tell you, I said with a slight smile. But you were too busy worrying about my budget apartment. Dad was scrolling through the documents, his expression shifting from shock to something like awe. You're smarter than both of us combined. The diversification, the growth strategy, the market timing, it's brilliant. I learned from watching you, I admitted. You both have good business instincts. You just applied them to corporate ladders instead of personal empires. I took those lessons and built something different. Something better, Mom said quietly. You built something better than we ever did. Different, I corrected. Not better. Just mine. The rest of Christmas Day was different. We talked, really talked, about my work, my properties, my art. Mom and Dad asked questions, genuine ones, about my techniques and business strategies and creative process. They looked at photos of my paintings on my phone and I saw something in their eyes I hadn't seen before. Understanding. Around dinner time, Dad poured 3 glasses of wine, the expensive bottle they'd been saving, and raised his glass. To Emma. Who knew her worth when we couldn't see it. To Emma, Mom echoed, her voice still thick with emotion. The most successful person in this family. I clinked my glass against theirs. To family. And to learning what success really means. We drank and I felt something shift in the room. The dynamic had changed permanently. They'd seen behind the curtain. They knew now who held the power, who signed the checks, who approved their lease. But more importantly, they'd learned the lesson I'd been trying to teach them for years. Worth isn't measured by what you show off. It's measured by what you build, who you are, and how you treat people on the way up. My phone buzzed with messages from Richard. The other tenants in the building were receiving their notices. Some were shocked, some were angry, some were resignedly accepting. All of them would pay. The market would bear the increase. I'd been thorough in my research. But Unit 47 would stay at 8,000. My parents would keep their view of the harbor, their imported marble, their designer lifestyle. Not because they'd earned special treatment through status or wealth, but because they'd finally learned to value what really mattered. Emma. Mom's voice was hesitant. Can I ask you something? Of course. Why did you let us live here? In your building? If you knew we'd be like this, judgmental and dismissive, why approve our application? I considered the question carefully. Because I hoped eventually you'd see me. Really see me. I thought proximity might help. And I wanted to be in a position to teach you this lesson when the time was right. That's incredibly patient, Dad observed. And slightly terrifying. I'm an artist, I said with a smile. We're good at playing the long game. Mom laughed, a real laugh this time, not the performative kind. I don't think I'll ever look at you the same way again. Good, I said. That was the point. We finished dinner, opened more presents and talked into the evening. At one point, Mom pulled out her phone and scheduled calendar reminders for every upcoming gallery showing. Dad asked if he could tour my other properties, genuinely interested in my management strategies. As I prepared to leave, heading back to my shabby studio that actually connected to a 3,000 square foot loft where I worked on my art, Mom hugged me tightly. Thank you, she whispered, for not giving up on us. For this lesson. We needed it. I know, I said simply. Dad walked me to the elevator, his arm around my shoulders. You know what the worst part is? Knowing you were listening to us mock you this morning while holding all the cards. You could have humiliated us at any moment. I'm not interested in humiliation, I replied as the elevator doors opened. I'm interested in growth. Yours and mine. You're a better person than we are, he said. I'm a different person, I corrected. But I'm working on being better every day. Maybe you could try that too. He hugged me hard and long. I love you, Emma. And I'm sorry I didn't say that enough. I'm sorry I didn't show it enough. You're showing it now, I said. That's what matters. The elevator descended 47 floors. I walked through the lobby, my lobby with its marble floors I'd selected and the artwork I'd curated. The security guard nodded respectfully. He knew who I was even if my parents hadn't. Outside, my 10-year-old Honda waited in its designated spot. I'd driven this car when I bought the building. I'd drive it until it died. Success didn't mean showing off. It meant knowing who you were and staying true to it regardless of who was watching. My phone lit up with one final message from Richard. All notices delivered. Building-wide increase implemented. Unit 47 exception confirmed. Merry Christmas, boss. I smiled and typed back, Merry Christmas, Richard. See you at the January review meeting. Then I drove home, to my modest studio that nobody knew was connected to a creative empire, to my simple life that funded a complex business empire, to my humble existence that proved worth wasn't about what you showed the world. It was about what you built when nobody was watching. And what I'd built was extraordinary.